we're ready to start, please don't hesitate to help yourself to some coffee on a cold day like this. Thank you for coming to join us. We are today marking a milestone in the efforts of the Archdiocese of Edmonton to protect all those who come under our care, whether it's at our parishes, youth camps, educational institutions, offices, wherever, and especially when it concerns children or other vulnerable persons. My name is Lorraine Turchansky. I'm Chief Communications Officer here at the Archdiocese. The program today will be quite simple. We'll hear first from Archbishop Richard Smith, who will speak about the progress we've made in the field of safe environments and abuse prevention. As the Archbishop, it's he who is ultimately responsible for ensuring that the local church offers safe and secure pastoral environments for children, vulnerable persons, as well as for our volunteers and personnel involved in pastoral ministry. He is also ultimately responsible for responding to any complaints of abuse and ensuring that victims receive an apology, compassion, and assistance in recovering from any harm they may have suffered. Our second speaker will be Dr. Richard Singhal. He is the founder of Praesidium Incorporated, which is a Texas-based firm that specializes in abuse risk management. And they have helped thousands of organizations over the years, including the Archdiocese. And they've been doing this work for over 2 decades. Dr. Singhal is a licensed child psychologist with more than 25 years of experience in abuse risk management, quality assurance, and program evaluation. His publications include 3 books, dozens of scientific articles, and curriculum for more than 30 specialized online training courses addressing abuse prevention in various organizations. He will speak about Praesidium's work with the Archdiocese and the significance of the Praesidium Accreditation that the Archdiocese has received. And you may have seen the trophy out at the front. That's our tangible sign of this accreditation. We'll open the floor to the questions afterwards, and for members of the media, any of our speakers will be available then for individual interviews. I'd like to also acknowledge some other people who are also joining us today. Teresa Kellendon, on my left, is head of our Department of Pastoral and Parish Services. And she's responsible for coordinating the Safe Environments and Abuse Prevention Training Program. Teresa is often the first point of contact when incidents are reported through our confidential email or abuse reporting hotline. And she was recently certified as a Praesidium Guardian for her work in developing a comprehensive training curriculum for clergy here in the Archdiocese. Next to her is Christy Schiller. She's the Vice President of Religious Services at Praesidium. Christy oversees the implementation of Praesidium's safe environment programs in over 20 Catholic dioceses in the United States and Canada. She also directs Praesidium's national accreditation program for Catholic men's religious orders and congregations in the U.S. Finally, I'd just like to acknowledge some special guests from the Zebra Child Protection Center here in Edmonton. Over there on your right, Samantha Dover and Lorraine Andrews. The specialists at the Zebra Center have also been an excellent source of advice and help in how to support victims and families whenever there is an allegation of child sex abuse. Samantha also spoke recently to representatives from Catholic dioceses across Western Canada at a conference on safe environments. Thank you both for joining us. It's my pleasure now to call on Archbishop Smith.
Thank you, Lorraine, very much, and good morning. Welcome. As Lorraine mentioned, we are today in the Archdiocese marking what we believe is a very significant milestone in all the years in which we've been working very assiduously on the whole issue of abuse prevention, risk management, and so on. I would want to highlight right from the very beginning that we have chosen to make this milestone, this accreditation by Praesidium, a public event. And we want to do that not to boast or not to toot our own horn, as it were. But I do think it's important that in the interest of openness and transparency, we allow not only our own people within the Archdiocese, but society in general know that we continue to be very vigilant on this matter. And I would also hope that this is going to be an occasion that can further some societal dialogue about this issue, because we do need to keep talking about this as a society, as part of the general effort to make sure that abuse simply does not take place. Now, I would want to say that through the hard work, really, of the dedication and the deep commitment of clergy, staff, and parishioners, the Archdiocese of Edmonton has now reached a point where we have been awarded what we call Praesidium Accreditation. And that's an honor that publicly demonstrates that we have in fact been working to achieve the highest standards in abuse prevention. And while we do mark the accreditation today, we also want to reinforce the message that abuse simply will not be tolerated in our churches and in our institutions. And that, as we all know within the Archdiocese, is a non-negotiable point. As the Archdiocese, we're thoroughly committed to ensuring that any archdiocesan employee, priest, or lay volunteer who, God forbid, offends against children or other vulnerable persons will be promptly removed from ministry, that any offenses are immediately reported to civil authorities, and that victims will receive an apology, compassion, and, of course, assistance in recovering from any harm that they have suffered, and that will include compensation where appropriate. The Archdiocese has been looking very, very closely at the issue of abuse prevention for many, many years. In fact, back in 1990, we established a special committee that would advise the Archbishop in how to respond compassionately, efficaciously, effectively to any allegations that come our way. Since 1992, nationally, the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops has had a series of templates that can guide dioceses in the formulation of abuse prevention policies and protocols and so on. And the Archdiocese here has worked with those templates all along. We also recognize, though, that we can never, at any point in any of this, be complacent. And what we have to ask ourselves is, what more can we do? What more can be done? And in answer to that question, we reached out for the best possible professional advice that we could find. And we turned to Praesidium. Now, Praesidium is an international leader in abuse risk management. And we wanted deliberately to place ourselves in a situation whereby an organization with the requisite expertise would look at us, would assess what we are doing, would give advice as to how we could do better, and yes, would consistently hold our feet to the fire to ensure that we would meet their standards. That third-party, arm's-length, objective verification is very important to us. And it also, I believe, would give assurance to the broader community that we are holding ourselves accountable to the highest standards possible, because we simply do not want children or any vulnerable persons to be in any form of risk in our institutions. We want environments that are truly safe. So we chose Praesidium because of their track record. Praesidium has a strong research focus, and over the last 2 decades it has helped thousands of other organizations, not just religious, but across the societal spectrum. And since about 2010, since we have entered into this process of working with Praesidium, approximately 12,000 priests, deacons, seminarians, staff, and lay volunteers across the Archdiocese have received training in abuse awareness and prevention through what is called the Called to Protect program developed by Praesidium. Praesidium, by the way, that word is Latin for defense, or protection. So even the name of the institution says a great deal. Comprehensive policies on abuse are posted on the Archdiocesan website. We want to be fully open and transparent about this, obviously. and screening procedures for all staff and volunteers have been strengthened. This has been a long and, in fact, challenging process. At times, some of our parishioners, this is to be honest, some of our parishioners have had difficulty understanding why, especially when we ask them to go through screening, to go through police checks and so on. And to a degree that's understandable. If we have people in our parishes, for example, who over 30 years have faithfully been counting the Sunday collection in an absolutely trustworthy fashion, all of a sudden they find themselves being asked for a police check. Why? But when we explain to them that all of our procedures and the requirements that we place upon them arise not out of the person but out of the ministry, and then out of a concern, obviously, in the final analysis, to protect the vulnerable, they understand, and we have had people cooperate with us. There's also the difficulty where some of our parishes will have limited financial resources and staff. This can be a very labor-intensive process. But I'm very pleased to say that we've overcome most of the hurdles, and our commitments to safe environments is stronger than ever. And the accreditation by Praesidium is testimony that we have overcome the obstacles, we're meeting their standards, and will continue to meet those standards into the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Archbishop Smith. Dr. Dingle, to give us a few words.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all very much for attending and for this honor to be here. I especially want to thank the people that are where the rubber hits the road in this solving this problem. I give these talks pretty much all over the world, and I can't tell you the number of times we've had this kind of conversation, and somebody in the audience will come up and disclose having been abused. I gave a talk at this insurance company meeting, and they flew in all these executives who were their big, high-rolling, rich people. A lot of them came in their own planes, and they had people talking about terrorism and a speaker about global warming, and they had me talking about this problem. And I said, it didn't seem like it fit, but the next morning I was going for breakfast, and this man, who's been on the cover of Forbes magazine, and he was in the audience, he came over and he said to me, can I sit with you? And I said, certainly. And he said, I just want to thank you for what you do. And then he said, when I was 10, my uncle raped me. And I told my parents, and my parents said, don't tell anybody or you'll destroy the family. And I've never told anybody until today. And he burst into tears. And so that's the why we do what we do. Because 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys are molested before they're 18. And so everything you can do and everything we can do to see that that doesn't happen, why are we doing what we're doing? The reason we're doing it is because of that. So just in terms of how we get started, I'm a child psychologist, and my first practice was treating kids that are in foster care. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with foster care, but a lot of it doesn't work. There's a lot of wonderful foster families, but there's some people that shouldn't be in foster care, and kids get abused and get molested. And those were the kids I was seeing. Well, it's depressing, because every day you go to work and you see 6 or 8 or 10 kids who have been cutting on themselves or trying to kill themselves because they've been molested. Well, coincidentally, I was on the board of a youth-serving organization, and we had a child there molested by a volunteer. And so we're talking about at the board meeting, the guy sitting next to me, this is all serendipitous how this stuff works. The guy sitting next to me, who I'd only recently met, owned an insurance company. And so he said, Dangle, you know, you're a psychologist. You're supposed to not let these things happen. What can we do about it? How can we manage this risk? Well, I'd never heard that concept before. But I went home and I just had like chills, and I thought, we got to do something about this. We can't let this keep happening. So I was also a faculty member at the University of Texas, so I had all these PhD students working for me for free. That was really good. And so we started doing research. And we basically researched everything that had ever been written at that time on how to stop abuse in organizations. Well, the fact is, wasn't anything written. Basically what was written, using the MMPI to do psychological screening. Well, we know that doesn't work. So we started using a process called root cause analysis, where you take an incident and you say, well, it happens in healthcare. So somebody dies on the operating room table. Well, why did they die? Well, they bled to death. Well, why did they bleed to death? Because the nurse used a 3 clamp instead of a 6. Why'd they use a 3? Because there weren't any. Why weren't there any? Because the supply clerk was out sick. So the root cause was a breakdown in the supply system. So when you do that kind of process, we've now done root cause analysis on a few thousand cases of abuse in organizations. When you do that, what you find out is not 4,000 causes. The root causes cluster in 8 operations: screening, training, policies, administrative practices, and so on. So what we've done is we've identified best practices in each of the operations for every type of industry. And so when we come in and work with here, then we look at all the operations. What do you have in terms of policies? And when there's gaps, we help the organization close those gaps. And when you close the gaps, you manage the risk and you don't have an incident. So then you keep people safe. So that's kind of part one. Developing the technology is all scientifically based. But that's only part of the problem, part of the solution. The other part of the solution is you have to have an organization that's willing to take on doing the heavy lifting and make a deep, dedicated commitment to making sure that this will not happen in this organization. What we found is, from the research, you need 4 pieces, 4 components. If you don't have any of these 4, the changes will not be sustainable. And the 4 pieces you need are, number 1, you need a compelling, dedicated, committed, loud leader who's going to say, we will not let this happen. Nothing's going to get in our way to stop our efforts to make sure this doesn't happen. If you don't have the voice from the top, and if the voice from the top isn't loud and doesn't speak often, it won't work. We've seen, I hate to tell you the number of failures we've seen, where the voice from the top becomes silent, and then it falls apart. So you gotta have the voice from the top, which you all have, and it wouldn't have happened without him. And then the second piece is, people have to understand how to stop it. What do you do? What do you need in training? And so you set what the standards are. You say, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, and we're all going to do it. That's the second piece. And then the third piece is giving them resources so they can actually execute what's required. And then the fourth piece is holding people accountable. So you got 4 pieces. And in order to be Praesidium accredited, you have to have those 4 pieces in place. And you all have them in place. And that's a major accomplishment. And every time we see an organization, especially of this size, do that, we feel thankful. And so I want to thank you all.